As a longtime Nintendo fan, I've come to expect a lot of Nintendo news in early June, usually in the form of a Nintendo Direct, and usually at E3. But in recent years, E3 hasn't been the most consistent event. For example, this year, it's been cancelled. And Nintendo hasn't consistently had a presence at E3, and as a result, their Directs don't necessarily come exactly when we would expect them to, those Tuesdays at the beginning of June. So with this all in mind, what about this June? Nintendo announced that they wouldn't have a presence at E3, and then E3 was cancelled, but we don't know about much beyond Pikmin 4. Does Nintendo have any plans to make a series of announcements this summer, in the form of a Direct, or perhaps something else? Let's talk about it.
Listen!
Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and today we're talking about whether we'll be seeing a Nintendo Direct or something else this June. But before we jump into things, let me point out that we are aiming to hit 25,000 subscribers by the time Tears of the Kingdom comes out on May 12th. So if you enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, because then we might just make it. So something I think a lot of people are thinking is that because there isn't an E3-like event that's holding Nintendo to a specific schedule, when they have their Direct, when they make their series of announcements, it's not going to be in the exact time we've come to expect when there is an E3-like event that Nintendo is a part of. So it might mean those Nintendo Directs we've come to expect on a Tuesday in the first or second week of June, not as likely. Last year, what we got was a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 specific Direct and a Direct Mini Partner Showcase a few weeks after when we would have gone the normal Direct. And they might do something similar this year, which to me would be a little disappointing because I've come to enjoy the general Nintendo Directs. They have a lot of exciting announcements. But that is something that may happen, and they may just give us the information we need to get us through the summer until it's time for a September Direct. But I gotta tell you, I don't think that's the situation this time around. Last year, we knew about Xenoblade Chronicles 3, we knew about Splatoon 3, we knew about Bayonetta 3, we knew about Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope, we knew about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The big games that Nintendo was publishing for the second half of the year, we knew about all of them and that they were coming at some point in the second half. In comparison to this year, all we know about is Pikmin 4 this July. If it was just one or two games that they needed to announce, maybe they could do those in a Direct Mini or a random Twitter drop, like that would have been possible. We've seen that before, like for example with Paper Mario Origami King. But because we're talking about maybe a half dozen or so published Nintendo games that have yet to have been announced, I think that's too many to just give us one announcement to push us into September. Because even if we don't have that many games taking us to September but one or two more announcements, once we get to September, if it was just one game that they would be announcing in September to come out, say, October or November, I could see. But to announce a release in September, in October, November, and maybe December in a September Direct, that's far too many big games with a very short window. I think they need more of a marketing lead up. We need to have a good understanding of what's to come. And I also don't think it's healthy for Nintendo to go a long time without us knowing what's coming beyond. Once Tears of the Kingdom comes out, all we know about is Pikmin 4. And I'm excited for Pikmin 4, but Pikmin 4 is not nearly as big as Tears of the Kingdom. They're going to need to give us more things. Yes, there was a period of time in 2020 when we didn't know about that many games to come, but those games still came, and that was the pandemic year. This is not a pandemic year, this is Nintendo back to more of a normal schedule, so I think it's very unlikely that we go an extended period of time without knowing about many major projects coming in the future. So if I had to place my bets, there will be a series of major announcements this summer, and I'm predicting probably in June. It's not necessarily going to happen at the exact same time because Nintendo isn't being held to a strict schedule by E3, but I think sometime in June there will be some type of presentation, and I think it's likely going to be a major Direct. However, There's another wrinkle to this conversation, and it could be tied to this situation about how we don't know about what's to come beyond Pikmin 4. And it could be related to this rumored Switch 2 event for June. And again, rumor, take it with a grain of salt. But it would make sense. It would make sense because typically we're not this late into the year without knowing about anything to come for the second half. That is odd. But if Nintendo's planning a major event to announce a series of things that run better on newer hardware, it actually sounds pretty reasonable. And if the Pokemon leak is truly legitimate, given that it detailed everything we've known about the DLC before that was announced, and that it also talked about a graphics patch for Switch 2 this winter, that would point towards a holiday release, and I think they would have to make the announcement of the games and the new system this summer. I think that would be the most likely scenario if it's coming this holiday. If it's coming out sometime next year, then we can wait on that. We don't need that now, but I still think there needs to be a major Nintendo Direct. So basically, if Switch 2 is coming out this holiday, I would expect that this big Direct that I'm sort of thinking we'll be getting this June will be announcing this Switch 2. Maybe it's not even called a Direct, it'll be some type of presentation. But if Switch 2 isn't coming out till sometime next year or possibly beyond that, then what we're getting this June is a Nintendo Direct. And I think it's going to be a general Nintendo Direct because of how many games Nintendo needs to announce for the second half. The other possibility is that we're just looking at a second half that isn't going to have that many games, and it's going to be the slowest period in terms of new Nintendo games throughout the entire Switch era, except maybe for the pandemic year. But I really doubt that. I think it's more likely one of the other two scenarios. The fourth scenario is that Nintendo does just give us a Direct Mini and a social media drop, and they somehow can get away with doing that, but then doing more in the coming months, and it's just a series of smaller presentations throughout the summer that will ultimately give us the lineup we need for the rest of the year with the proper amount of time. But I think that would have to be a consistent series of presentations for months to come because, again, while they did have some extra presentations last year, we also knew about all the games already for the second half, so it's a different situation. Something else I want to point out before we finish things up here is that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed recently got announced to be coming out April 25th. This expansion we're thinking is going to be fairly significant, at least comparable to Torrent of the Golden Country, which is a pretty substantial DLC release that's going to take 20 to 30 or even 40 plus hours to beat. It's effectively a fairly sizable RPG coming out in the middle of nowhere this April. We thought it might be coming out in June given the vacancy of a big Nintendo game in that time and that the soundtrack would be coming out at the end of July, but for it to be coming out in April, just a few days after Advance Wars, literally 4 days, Advance Wars has already released, it came out April 21st, and Future Redeemed is coming out April 25th, that's kind of an odd thing for Nintendo to do, especially with Tears of the Kingdom coming out May 12th. There's a lot of things that are coming out in quick succession here, and it sort of feels like Nintendo's cleaning up the slate. A lot of pretty quality games have come out in this first half of the year, or not even the first half, in the first 5 months of the year. I'll also point out Prime Remastered and Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe came out within a week of each other as well. I find it odd, and yes, because of it, I do have this sense that, oh, maybe something bigger is happening in June. That is my thought, but I also have to caution you guys. As extraordinary as it would be to have a next generation announcement event in June, we would need compelling evidence to believe it, I would say. If it does happen, I would say it would also be equally odd for them to make this kind of announcement just a month removed from the release for Tears of the Kingdom. So, while I think there's a chance, we should definitely temper our expectations and hold out and see what's going to happen. That said, I do feel confident in saying that we're at least looking at some sort of series of announcements this June. At least some kind of Direct. But those are my thoughts on the matter. What do you all think? Do you think a Nintendo Direct or something else is coming this June? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andre's Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.